The first round of the NFL draft is in the books, and the Pittsburgh Steelers take defensive lineman out of Oregon, Derrick Harmon. I'm Chris Carter, host of the Locked On Steelers podcast. We break that down, why they passed over Shedeur Sanders, and top looks into day 2 of the NFL draft, all here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show in your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. Steelers fans, the pick is in. We know who it is. It's Derrick Harmon. It's all been settled out. I told you to watch me on the live stream with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you did, you learned about Derrick Harmon before anyone else because I had it before Ian Rappaport, Jordan Schultz, Adam Schefter, anybody out there. I was putting it out there. The word was on the streets that they were picking Derrick Harmon. And let me just say, I said for months, D-tackle would be the move for the Steelers. Doesn't matter about quarterback, Shedeur Sanders, all that stuff. This was always going to be the move. I said for months, and especially in the last 3 weeks when people really started to hype up the Shedeur Sanders possibility, it was a smokescreen. It was always a smoke screen. A reminder to everyone who said I was crazy when I said that. I try to tell people, I know what I'm talking about around here. I've been doing this. I have people I talk to. There's people that trust me. And I'm trying to let y'all know, when I say something, pay it some credence. I'm not right 100% of the time. I miss some things. But on the overall projection of where the team wants to go, I usually have a sense of that. And I think the Steelers hit here with Derrick Harmon. Now, my pick was Kenneth Grant. He went at 13th overall to the Dolphins. Dolphins got a heck of a player in him. But Derrick Harmon, as I said when I interviewed him at the Combine, when we looked over his tape, when we broke him down here, he would be a heck of a pick for the Steelers in the first round of the NFL draft. And so much he was. And it was crazy, but he was the 4th defensive tackle off the board. He was my 3rd ranked defensive tackle behind Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. But I think he brings a ton of upside to the Steelers on top of being a good player just to come into the NFL. When you look at what he brings to the table, first of all, as a pass rusher, he created more pressure than any interior pass rusher in all of college football last season, with 55 total pressures. Now, he only had 5 sacks, but the ability to beat offensive linemen, to get in the backfield, he has in his pocket. He's not going to be the primary sack man, but he is going to be a man that can split double teams, that can get behind offensive guards and centers, and use his frame to work to his advantage. And the Steelers needed that guy who wasn't just a pass rusher, but also could help against the run, which he can with his size and his athleticism and his build, that he could be both of those guys. And that he could also, while helping out right now, could potentially be the future Cam Hayward of the team. And I'm not just saying that because, he's a first-round pick. He's the first-round defensive lineman they've chosen since Cam Hayward. I'm not saying that just because. I'm saying that because if you look at their builds, they are so similar in so many ways. Here's the relative athletic score I'm pulling up on YouTube, but I'm going to read it out for y'all who listen to this podcast and can't see what we're doing. Derrick Harmon, height, 6'4" and 4/8. Cam Hayward, 6'4" and 5/8. Very close. Weight, 313 pounds for Derrick Harmon, 294 for Cam Hayward. This was Cam Hayward when he was coming out of Ohio State in 2011. Now, Cam Hayward didn't run a 40-yard dash, and neither have enough data to form a relative athletic score completely. But Derrick Harmon's was a 4.95 40-yard dash. It was an 8.83 relative athletic score on the 40-yard dash because that's a really good time for a defensive tackle. But you look at the height, you look at the hand size, a 10.38 for Derrick Harmon, a 10.13 for Cam Hayward. So his hands are just slightly bigger. His arms are just slightly longer, 34.38 to Cam Hayward's 34.25 coming out of college. He's slightly longer, slightly bigger. And on top of that, he's young. He's 21 years old. And you have to you look at this and you say, like, hey, you know what? This is pretty close to what the build is and what you hope there. And he has the upside of being a productive pass rusher in college already, coming to you with experience. And again, when I talked to Derrick Harmon, we were able to look at him and say, like, hey, you know, how do you model your game? What do you do to be a better player? And Derrick Harmon went right to talking about Chris Jones, talking about Cam Hayward, how he models his game after guys like that. That stuff is impressive because he's a guy, if you go from his time in Michigan State, his time to his time in Oregon, he developed his game. He wasn't just a guy who just said, oh, I'm athletic, I'm just going to rely on that, I'm going to go win. He studies. He studies Chris Jones and Cam Hayward because their body types are very similar to his. And he knows that if he has to win in the NFL, he has to play a certain style. He has to play a certain way. And again, 55 pressures, 5 sacks, 7 quarterback hits. 55 pressures led all of college football last year for interior defensive linemen. That's extremely impressive for what you're looking for there. And the Steelers got their guy in the first round in being in that position. And I got to tell you, when I talked to Derrick Harmon at the Combine, I was impressed because he also gave off the type of leadership qualities that Cam Hayward gives off. He's composed, he's classy, he's thoughtful. And he's not shy to talk about his strengths, but he's also humble enough to say, I'm not going to go too far here. And the Steelers, they need a guy in the middle of their defense that can help reestablish them as a dominant force up the middle against the run, but can also double as a threatening pass rusher up the middle. Because if teams have to worry about multiple guys again in the middle part of the Steelers defense as pass rushing threats, then it makes it that much harder for them to tee off on guys like TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith on the edges because they're so focused on the interior. And then if those guys are all getting after it, it's creating more opportunities for guys in the secondary to be able to go make plays because their quarterbacks are rushing passes. And when you're getting pressure up the middle through that leads to more mistakes, more rushed play, more more errant throws. And that gives the secondary, the linebackers, chances to make plays. If you don't remember what it was like to hear from Derrick Harmon at the Combine, I saved the clip from when I was asking him questions at the Combine. So here's Derrick Harmon when we talked to him at the Combine, and he talked about Cam Hayward, Chris Jones, and the players he was there. Without further ado, here's Derrick Harmon.
With your size and skill set, what would you say is your most comfortable place on the line, or are you just a versatile guy?
I feel like I'm very versatile. I can play from the 0 to the 5. I feel like I put that up and take this year.
Have you talked to the Steelers at all yet?
One more time?
Have you talked to the Steelers at all yet?
Yes,
Was that formally or informal?
Formal.
Do you get a chance to talk to Tomlin?
Yes, sir.
What was your first impression?
A great guy, man. That's a guy you can sit down, have an hour talk with, 2 hour talk with, just talk ball, talk life. A great guy to talk to.
Is there any guys that you kind of currently watch in the NFL? Like Cam Hayward is one guy for the
Most
Steelers.
definitely Cam. I watch Chris Jones, how he just grab wrist, grab elbow, so quick. I feel like that comes natural to me, just like it comes natural to him.
What was your playing weight at Oregon, and what are you at right now?
Playing weight was like 315. Right now, 317. Trying to be 315 by the time I'm out of my right.
What's one thing from Cam Hayward's game that you really appreciate?
The run, how he plays that run. Like I said, if I want to watch some run tape, I'm turning on Cam Hayward.
With your big frame, how have you worked to protect yourself, from smaller or offensive linemen that can get up under you?
Pad level's everything. Pad level's key.
When did you feel like you got a comfortable pad level, or has that always been a strength of yours?
Short like the earlier year of my freshman year, it's probably a big deal because I came in, tall guy, not really knowing what to do, but I feel like it got better throughout the years, most definitely.
What's a moment in a game that you can remember where, like, hey, I worked on this really hard in practice and it came up in a big moment that led to a big result for you?
The splitting of double teams against those State and just making plays right there. That's pretty much it.
You talked about splitting double teams. What was the big things you had to learn to do that more consistently as a player?
really just lockout, keeping that outside hand locked out, and once you drop to that knee, releasing that inside hand.
What do you hope to show here at the combine?
One more time.
What do you hope to show here at the combine athletically?
Really, I can move quick for a big guy. I can move well, and I can run fast.
In what ways have you grown as a leader? What do you think is your best leadership quality?
I'm not a guy that's going to do all that rah-rah with you, or is going to go in front of the team and talk. I'm just going to show what I can do on the field. My time at Oregon, that's what I had to do. They wanted me to come in and be that big alpha, do all the rah-rah. I'd rather just go on the field, show what I can do on the field, and be a leader that way.
So one thing I really love about Derrick Harmon, when you talk to him back in February when I was talking to him at the combine, which is the clip you saw there, him talking about the specifics. He's like Chris Jones, him grabbing the wrists, the elbows, the little tricks that he does to become an efficient player. But you also got to love, I think, when he said, I showed I can play 0 to 5 tech, which 0 means right on the nose or right over top of the center, playing in the middle, just like you want, putting pressure up the middle. 5 tech is like Cam Hayward being able to flex all the way out. And he has shown that he can do that. He's quick on his feet. He's quick with his hands. And with his size and frame, having those on his favor, as well as being a good athlete, a heck of a good athlete, maybe even a great athlete, all that adds up, in my opinion, to being a dangerous interior defensive line presence, which is what I think that Derrick Harmon is ultimately going to end up being, which is why I had him as a first-round target and a priority for the Steelers. And I think this is a big win for the Steelers overall because, again, they needed to be able to improve their ability to stuff the run. They also needed to improve their ability to rush the passer, and they did both with getting this guy in this position. And I think that, I hearken back to what Mike Tomlin said when I asked him the question about, players who might be specified for a specific position. He said that's not a concern as much in the first round because those guys have the pedigree to flex around and be available and be ready at all the positions. And sure enough, Derrick Harmon, a guy who maybe he played a little more 5 tech, but now he can. He's a guy that feels like he can play all over the place. Where the Steelers put him, I think they're going to let him roam a little bit, or not roam, excuse me, but they're going to let him. They're going to figure out where that is. They want to line him up, and I don't think they're afraid to because now they have defensive line depth. They have Keanu Benton, they have Cam Hayward, and now they have Derrick Harmon on top of the other guys. And I still wouldn't put it past them to draft another defensive tackle. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I know the biggest hang up that a lot of people had about selecting Derrick Harmon was the fact that the Steelers passed on Shedeur Sanders, who did fall to them at 21. I wasn't sure if that was going to happen, and there were a lot of people that felt like if he did, he was going to be the pick. He wasn't. Why was that? We'll talk about that next year on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I remind you this episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. You can add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture, and it'll double your reach to qualified candidates. It's no wonder that 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn Jobs helps them find high-quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter here as we continue to react to the Steelers' first round decision to go for Derrick Harmon. Now, I want to address the elephant in the room, or the buffalo in the room, if you excuse me. And that's Shedeur Sanders. And a lot of y'all were really excited about the prospect of taking him. And I'm not mad at those who were excited to take him because I get it. Quarterback, you're thirsty for a quarterback. He made a lot of big throws at the college level. But as I told a lot of y'all, everyone on this channel, I did not see him as a first-round pick. And lo and behold, here we are at the end of the first round, and he's in the second round. Now, I want to make this clear. I'm not celebrating Shedeur Sanders going to the second round because personally, I don't have a tie to that. Nor do I think that Shedeur Sanders dropped because of any personality or cockiness or arrogance. I think that his tools just don't scream franchise quarterback in the NFL. They do bring in questions as far as how he's going to transition to the league. So I want to make sure that's clear for those out there that think that, oh, this is about him being, he's too flashy, he's this, that. I don't care about none of that. And the people who do, get a life, touch grass, do whatever you got to do. That ain't why he wasn't picked. Why he wasn't picked was because he doesn't have NFL arm strength. He can flick a deep ball and he can throw it precisely down the field. But there weren't a whole lot of samples of his college tape where he could sit and make a precise NFL throw 30 yards on a strike down the seam in between, hit that tight passing window consistently while going through his reads, and not in a play where he rolled out to his left or rolled out to his right, stood there for a while, and then got to make a big throw where he was able to put the ball in the money. Because I will say that the elite trait that Shedeur Sanders brings to the table is his accuracy. His throwing motion is very consistent. That leads to him getting the ball out at the right time, and that allows him to make really big plays with his eyes and his arm. And he deserves a ton of credit for that. That's why he's a dangerous guy, and that's why I think he will get picked in the second round. But as far as the first round, you want NFL size. He doesn't have that. He's a little bit shorter. You want NFL arm strength. He doesn't have that. I think his arm is not that powerful. He gets the job done. You want NFL speed. He's definitely not that guy because that's not his specialty at all. So you look at all those things, and what does Shedeur Sanders bring to the table? In my book, I think he brings to the table a guy that could be that playmaker guy who's still figuring it out. And that's fine if he's figuring it out. But if you're the Steelers, you don't need to take the flyer on the guy who's figuring it out right now, especially in that position. And I think that's the thing, is that if you're looking at quarterback, you don't need to swing wildly at Shedeur Sanders, which is what they didn't do. And that's fine. And I think they're better off for it. Let's be real. Shedeur Sanders probably would have been in that Kenny Pickett class. And then he would have been the top quarterback picked in that class. But just because you think that you're desperate for a quarterback, it does not mean that you should be willing to pause everything and throw things away for such a quarterback when they're a second round pick. Again, if the Steelers, and I said this all along, I think Shedeur Sanders is a second round pick. But if the Steelers draft team, scouts, whatever, and they feel that he's a first round pick, then they should go out and get him. And clearly that's not the case, because they had several opportunities to send things and they did not. So for me, I look at this situation and I think it adds up for me. I'm not all that shocked. And you shouldn't be either, because we banged the table. I was banging the table here for months. The D tackle was going to be the pick, not Shedeur Sanders, not Jackson Dart, not quarterback. It was going to be D tackle. And I think that is a smart play from the Steelers. They put themselves in a position now where they can now look forward to other positions, but that this puts them in a spot where I think they're going to look at this and say, okay, we got our D tackle for the future. Now let's start addressing other positions. But I also wouldn't, again, put it past them to double dip at that position, which is very much a possibility. But again, let's take a step back and look at the quarterback situation again, because right now the Steelers quarterbacks are still just Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson. Omar Khan said they'd want to get into they'd want to make sure that 4 quarterbacks were ready for training camp. Aaron Rodgers still hasn't officially arrived. We'll see what happens with that and all. But for me, I do think that when it comes to Shedeur Sanders, again, it's not about personality or anything like that. It's just talent-wise, I don't think he's got it. At least as a first rounder. Second rounder, if they find a way to trade back up in the second round and they get him, go them. They've done a good job, and I think that's something to consider. But I do also think that when looking at Shedeur Sanders and everything, you look at what they've done, and the 4-8 record, and sure the completion percentage is really high, but a lot of those were really short passes. It adds up to me, at least, that's why that not only did the Steelers pass on him, but so did the other teams in the first round of the NFL draft. So there you have it there. I want to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about what the Steelers need to be looking at in day 2 of the draft here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, remind you this show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, new customers can join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, and you get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet of 5 or more wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals and assists. FanDuel has so many ways for you to bet on your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into same-game parlays for the chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. We're back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, your host here, doing a solo show for day 1 of the NFL draft is in the books. So whenever we get to the second day of the draft, we start to look over, okay, who lasted from the first day of the draft that you didn't expect? Now, I have a few guys that I expected to go in the first round who didn't, but the biggest one, the undoubted one that has everyone raising their eyebrows is Will Johnson, the cornerback out of Michigan. Now, he has a knee injury. There's people wondering about that. There have been some inquiries, but he was seen as one of the best cornerbacks going into this draft class. And I just think it's crazy that he's now in the second round because of this injury. This injury might be actually really serious. But even if they don't get him, and Will Johnson, they still got plenty of other options. Nick Eamon-Worry still on the board. Luther Burden still on the board. Emeka Egbuka going off. That one coming off my guard. I thought he would be a bigger thing, but that's another thing here. Darius Alexander still on the board. Again, I still don't put it past the Steelers to draft a guy who's going to go against. I think there's still chances there, even if they don't have the relative athletic score. But just looking at guys like Azariah Thomas, guys like Jaden Higgins, there's plenty of options in the second round I think will be there. The question will be who will be around in the third round, because that's where the Steelers pick at 83rd overall. And that's the bottom line that the Steelers have to be looking at there. So your top day 2 targets, I assume Will Johnson's going to get picked somewhere, but every day he's not. I'm just like, wow, that happened again. But when I look at the players that are available right now, I see opportunities for the Steelers. Even if you take out those top guys like Will Johnson and Nick Eamon-Worry, Luther Burden, and Travion Henderson, I get it if you're saying that that's enough of that crew. But when I look at how the big board is setting up for the Steelers to happen on, on day 3, on the day 2 of the draft in the third round, I think it gets interesting because some of these guys might get pushed further and further down, and that could be really interesting to see how the Steelers play it off in this day 2, because they can go so many different directions. They can still go running back, which is still such a priority for the Steelers. I think in this draft class, they want to at least get a little bit of background there to help with that. I think they also want to look at, what quarterback situations could be there, because a lot of the quarterback situations have been or cornerback, excuse me. A lot of the cornerback situations I thought early on were the primary concerns here. But when you got Darian Porter, when you got Will Johnson still on the board, those are all question marks. Siobhan Ravel still on the board. Those are all question marks as far as guys that could have upside. And that could be really interesting to see what happens there if they're able to go get the corner in the third round. But again, I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to they're gonna be able to control it. But wide receiver is another position that I thought was really interesting, and I have guys like Kyle Williams, a true route runner out of Washington State, being a serious target for them later in the draft. Maybe not at 83, but hey, maybe at 83. But to me, this pick made a lot of sense. This move made a lot of sense. I think that there's still a long way to go for the Steelers to be a complete roster, but this was a foundational piece that you just drafted here. This is a guy who's going to help you out in the short term, help you out in the long term, get you ready for the NFL. Again, alongside Cam Hayward, who's, again, very similarly built to him. I think there's a lot of positive things you can take away from the Steelers taking Derrick Harmon. Let me know what you think in the comment section here on YouTube or on Twitter. If you ever want to follow me at Carter Critiques, you can read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. You can find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, breaking down your Pittsburgh Steelers. Tomorrow, we'll have more responses, though, with more bonus content on the Steelers pick being in at number 83 overall. Presumably, they don't trade up or trade back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. So thanks again for tuning in, everyone. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, all the same handle all the time, at Carter Critiques. You can read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com, where, again, I was first out there and trying to get that out there. On Derrick Harmon being the pick. So a lot of good things happening for the Steelers right now in the draft season. We'll keep it up here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Stick with us. We will be back tomorrow after we see day 2 of the NFL draft and how the Steelers used their 1 second-round pick. They don't have a second-round pick. Excuse me, their 1 third-round pick, because that's all they have left on day 2 of the draft. We'll see how that gets used next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.